You are watching the End of the Flow podcast, Sleeveless Edition. All right, welcome, Flowmies, to another edition of the Sleeveless Edition of the End of the Flow podcast. And I'm here with Kory Klimas of Coastal Window Cleaners, right?
Coastal Cleaners, yeah.
Coastal Cleaners Window Cleaning out there in the New England area. How you doing, Kory?
Doing pretty well.
Good deal.
Thanks for having me on tonight. Appreciate it.
Absolutely. So you have recently been added as one of the moderators for Into the Flow. How are you enjoying that so far?
So far, so good.
Yeah.
Not too bad. Kind of just dipping my toes in the water a little bit.
Yeah, it can take some time out of the day, you know, and then there's always the times with the mod chat that you'll come into 50 unread messages.
Yeah, that's the thing. I mean, a lot of times I'll crash out. You know, we got with the baby at home right now. The sleep schedule's a little nutty, so I'll nod out like 8:30 sometimes. Sometimes I'm up late. Sometimes I nod out super early and I come up and I'm like, oh my God. I'm trying to scroll back.
You got to catch up, yeah. Well, and it doesn't help that we're covering all four time zones.
Yeah.
So we've got somebody in pretty much every time zone, and so at some point, you know, somebody from the West Coast is still up, and you know, we get chatting about something. And
yeah,
I've literally nodded off, went to sleep in the middle of the chat before. So, how's things going out there for you with all the 2020 stuffs going on?
It's been an interesting is an understatement, but it's a different year. This is the first year that I've done pretty much 90% of the work solo, and it wasn't really planned to be that way. I had someone lined up for coming in April, which is, I'll start getting phone calls usually mid-March, start booking out. You know, I'll start working 20, 30 hours a week towards late March. And then by middle of April, I'm really rolling with full time and I can start, you know, thinking about bringing somebody else in. I had a guy lined up. Obviously, COVID kind of shut everything down.
Yep.
Completely shut down for about 6 weeks. And at that point, brought me to the beginning of May. And that's when, I mean, everything, like the floodgates just opened. And it's not an ideal time to bring someone in because you don't have the time or the resources to train and produce the work that I need to be producing to keep up with the demand.
Yeah, it can definitely be a double-edged sword trying to balance the work, but then it can almost make more work when you have somebody that's unseasoned and you're trying to get them up to speed, and you have to end up going back, and a lot of times you're fixing.
It's impossible to bring someone in. I mean, you're throwing them. It's not fair to them. And my experience has also showed me that it's too stressful. It's too much for me to bring someone in late in the season because I go 100 miles an hour from May 1 to July 31st. That's like, I would say I make probably 60% of my yearly income in that 3-month time period.
Okay.
I mean, it's definitely over 50%. It's like, that's definitely the lion's share of the business here in New England. So trying to produce at the level I need to produce at for that 3-month time period, you can't be babysitting. You're pulled away, you know, I'm up on a ladder, and then every 5 minutes, can you come help with this? Can you show me how to do this? I can't figure out this. Where is this tool? And then next thing you know, like I've gotten maybe a half hour work done in an hour's time. My production's cut in half. So you're spending more time on the job having someone. I mean, the bad help is worse than no help. That's basically what I boil it down to. And it's not necessarily their fault, but I can't dedicate the time to training them.
Yeah, I even had that discussion with my daughter this last week. I'm like, I need to spend more time with you to get you to a point where you can go do more than just basically storefront level windows and be able to be somewhat proficient at it. And it's my fault because I haven't taken enough time to show all the details. And it can be pretty tough. You know, we've been doing this stuff for a long time and it comes easy to us. So a lot of times what I found is when you're trying to train someone or teach somebody the right ways to do things, you skip some of the little details that we don't even think about anymore.
Yeah, it's the mindless things that just kind of, they just happen for you.
Yep. So,
Yeah,
I even had to sit back and go, okay, she's been working with me full time for about a year now. She worked on and off before that, but most of it was just seeing what I do, and it needs to be more than just seeing. It's like the
it's not
book.
just her seeing what you do. It's you explaining each little part of everything you do, and then also watching. You have to take the time also to step away from the window and watch her, and then pick up on those little things. If she's skipping like one minor little detail that maybe makes her a little more efficient, or maybe, just speeds everything up a little bit. Mm-hmm. So it's definitely, it's a time commitment to training someone efficiently. And I found this year that I'm not at that point, and I don't know if I will get back to that point where I'll bring somebody else on.
Yeah, well, Chris Doolin and I had that conversation that it was almost, well, not almost, it was a liberating feeling for him not to have to worry about employees this year. And he had I think 4 or 5 full-time people at one point. And because of, things out of his control, he had to lay everybody off. And now he's found that stress of having people work for you is gone, and he feels better about the work he's doing, and he's actually back to having fun and enjoying his job again. So,
I was kind of in the same exact position this year.
Yeah, and that's, I've said it several times, but that's why I did the class that I did, not this one, but the huge convention before, about being profitable as an owner operator. If you want to stay small, there's nothing wrong with that. I downsized majorly to get to where I'm at today, but it was all on purpose. It wasn't like I failed at the job I was at before and go, well, I guess I got to do it all myself now. I don't want the headache.
Yeah, I would have never thought. I mean, I guess that's kind of a blessing in disguise with the way that COVID changed this year, because I would have never approached the year and been like, all right, I'm going to tackle this year by myself.
Right.
Knowing the volume I've done for the last 5 to 10 years, the volume of houses and the way the business was growing, it almost seems like insane to think I'm going to go tackle that by myself. But this year, I was able to first of all, I was able, with myself and one full-time, one part-time, and then another person that helped occasionally last year. So 3 other people, not full-time guys, but sometimes there's 4 of us on the job. I was able to do about 80% of the volume for May, June, and July this year that I did last year with that staff of.
Wow.
So it was nuts. I mean, I saw the times this year.
And it's interesting to see what you can do when you have to.
And again, you're not paying payroll. You're not stressed out about how to organize the daily, all the work for the day. Like, all right, how do I make sure everybody's staying busy? Everyone's finishing at the same time. No one's standing around waiting for someone else to finish. Yep. And then the most important thing and the best thing, and my wife and my kids will attest to this, is coming home from work and not spending 30 minutes going through all the stresses and all the anxiety and all the BS that I had to deal with employees.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, let's be honest. Some people are lucky they got good employees. I've been doing this 15 years by myself, another 5 years with another company, which I was very lucky with that company. And he had a lot of good guys. But in the 15 years on my own, I had one person that I would bring, without question, I would bring her back today full time. But one out of the countless employees, I had one that was great.
It's tough. And I think it's gotten exponentially harder over the last 10 years. What I dealt with when I left the janitorial company in 2009, what I was dealing with as far as employee issues then are they're similar, but they're a lot more. I don't even know what the right word. Um, Explosive, or there's just seems to be more of an opportunity for really bad things to happen nowadays, and that has just got me to the point where I'm going to do everything that we can possibly do ourselves.
Yep.
There's been a few times that we've gotten really busy and Anthony's come over and he's helped out, and for me it's much less stressful to pay a little bit of extra to have a sub come in and get us over a hump than
Yeah,
it is to try to bring somebody in.
That's the blessing about this group too. That you were able to make that connection. Anthony's solid.
Yep.
You know what he's capable of. I mean, he's a seasoned window cleaner. He knows. He's been around, and you're bringing in someone that you don't have to babysit. You don't have to worry about at all. You know what you're going to get from him, and it's going to be to your standards.
Yeah, he's come over 2 different jobs this year as well, same building, but 2 different times. And this last one, I just took him in and got him badged at the hospital, and then I can cut him loose. I don't even have to be there to get him started.
Yep.
I just show him the areas he's got to go. He's got his badge. He can get in, and you're good to go. And then that gets him in several other buildings that I've got coming up now too. So that again to me was a much better opportunity. One, it's helping him out.
Yep.
That's also helping us. And then I don't have to lay anybody off. I don't have to worry about, trying to get more work to just keep somebody busy, and then all the headaches that go with it. So I totally get it.
Yeah, it's a good way to look at it.
Now, in the area that you're in, you have a lot of historical homes. You were talking the other day about a house that was 230 or 40 years old?
240 years. And
that is crazy.
It had a handful of the original windows still in it, which is
240 years. So somebody that possibly is, if my math is right, and I'm not good at math, but somebody that possibly could have fought in the Revolutionary War could have lived in that house.
Oddly enough, the town I was working in, Stonington, Connecticut, there is I'm not a history guy. I know a little bit about it just for working in this area, living in this area for so long. The Battle of Stonington was a very crucial point in the war. The British fleet was trying to get to land there. And there's a cannon still down there. Cannon Square is still down there. They have the cannon. It sounds better to say there was one cannon. There might have been more than one, but it was a small militia group. There's a cannon still there. The story I've heard is that there was one cannon, and they held off the British fleet from reaching the shore.
Wow.
With a small militia and one cannon. So, I mean, this is an area, it's like one of the first settled areas over here. One of the original colonies, that old New England-style home. There's a lot of cut-ups out here. But yeah, 240 years old. So I was thinking about it when I was there. Like, this person just could have potentially just fought to win their independence from Britain, and then they built that house within 3 or 4 years after that.
Wow, that's hard to think about. That's just
it gave me chills when I thought about it.
Yeah,
I got goosebumps when I thought about it. And you think about the history of the generations that were in that house. 240 years. How many people lived there? How many families came through a property like that?
Yep. Yeah,
it was cool, but it's also one of those jobs where, and I put the video up. I had to troubleshoot some things that you don't really. The first thing I noticed is, taking the storms out. It's a 9/6 window, so the back sash is taller than the bottom. So when you go to take the second storm out, it was too tall. It wouldn't fit through the gap. So my initial thought, because I didn't really study the components of the window yet, was to go out and see if I could actually pull the frame of the storm off, just pull that whole thing off, take the screws out. That might have been the easiest way to do it, because you couldn't reach under. They were so thin, the sashes. You couldn't even reach under and just give a wipe on both sides. My hand wouldn't fit in there. So I go out, and the storms, all the screws on the storms had been painted over several times. You weren't going to get those off. So then I'm in scratching my head and looking. The left, there's a strip of wood on the left that had 3 screws in it. It releases. And that was the design to put those in. So you slide these the sashes in, and you put that in, and that's the guide where the sash slides up and down. The painters, not a lot of painters know. Anybody who does maintenance on these houses, not a lot of them know from a 240-year-old window how to properly, do the upkeep on it so you can still take it apart if you need to. So I look, the screws have been painted over. The strip, like somebody saw that gap, a painter saw the gap, and he just mopped it. I don't know if he shot caulk in there or what, but that gap was gone. So I had to, take the screws out. I had to score the gap with a knife and then pull it out, and then they came out. I said about 150 curse words throughout the duration of that job. But at the end of the day, you look back at the work, you're like, wow, I just washed the windows and they look amazing at a house that's 240 years old.
Yeah, that's got to be some.
And the owners probably, there might have been some dirt on that glass that was 240 years old.
Now, we could probably have about a 4 or 5 hour podcast if we wanted to talk about the right ways to do historical homes, historical glass. So for the sake of time and what we're doing here, what are some things, if somebody gets a opportunity to quote a historical home, whether it's 100 years old or 200 years old, whatever it is, what are some things that they should look for in your experience that would either tell them they need to call somebody to get some better information to know, or to walk away?
First, depending on your experience level, if you have a little bit of experience working on some older windows, if you're someone who's newer and you've never seen a home, I would just say it's out of my league, walk away. If you have a little bit of experience, it's going to be a lot of trial and error. First of all, you're going to go into a house, and anybody who's worked with storm windows, old sashes, knows the job never goes perfectly smooth. There's always something that's going to trip you up.
Yeah.
But if you're approaching a job like that, to quote it, the most important thing, and one thing I would be adamant about doing, is do a thorough, you have to go into the house. I would unlock the windows. And some of these, the sash cords, the ones with the weights in them, you unlock that window. If those cords and the weights aren't attached, those sashes come crashing quick. So, there's a lot of little things you do, and you don't think about it. But when I go into an old home and they have the sash cords, I grab that top sash with this hand, and then I unlock. That way, if that has no weights, I have my hand there to catch it, because I've done it before where you unlock it and the thing comes crashing down.
Yep.
Same thing when you open the bottom sash. Don't just open it and then let it go and think that you're good, because it could come crashing down. I actually had a client probably about 6 years ago. They hired me to do an old home. He lost 3 fingers trying to do his windows. He had old sashes with the storms. The weight wasn't attached, and when he opened it, it kind of jammed itself just a little bit, and when he reached to pull the storm out, it let go, and it came down and crunched. He had 2.5 fingers. He's got, these fingers are completely gone, and the ring finger is halfway gone.
Wow.
So
just
again,
trying to open his windows to clean them.
Yeah. Well, the funniest part about that story was, so the wife called me the year after he lost his fingers. She's like, I want to get this for him as a Father's Day gift. I want to gift him, have someone come in and professionally clean the windows. So I do the job, and the whole thing was like secretive. I came and quoted it when he wasn't there. I started the job. The job took a long time, so he had come in while I was working on it. So afterwards, I go to hand her the bill. She's like, you can give it to my husband. I was like, that's a good Father's Day gift. Give him the bill.
Wow.
He didn't lose any more fingers, though, so.
Well, yeah, I suppose I would be happy to pay the bill if I had lost my fingers to a window and somebody else had come in and cleaned it successfully.
Well, yeah, that's the main thing. If you're going to quote it, inspect everything. So
that's really good to know, especially if you have employees, because you could have an employee that happen to them, and they lose a finger or two. And
that's another thing that brings me back to the stress of when I do take on one of those jobs, and I would take on less of those when I had more people, because I mean, a standard job, you're getting pulled away from what you're doing a handful of times an hour to go and explain something or teach something. On a job like that, I'm not getting anything done if I have 3 people there, because they can't. I mean, there's so many issues and so many little things that you have to know about those old windows, or you're setting yourself up for failure. So when you bring 3 people into the house, I mean, my anxiety would be through the roof trying to bring 3 people into a job like that.
Yeah, I can imagine.
I mean, not only someone possibly getting hurt, something breaking, windows breaking. It was just, I don't mind doing those because I've been doing them for so long. But it's not a job you're going to bring someone new in and feel comfortable and confident letting them go.
Oh, I can imagine. Yeah. And that can be hard to do, is walk away. Sometimes it's just the entrepreneur in us or the adventure. Like, I can do this. I want to be able to, but losing a finger over it is definitely not worth cleaning somebody's window.
Getting that back. Yeah. I mean, the window breaks, you can fix it. You lose a finger, that's gone.
Man, that's crazy. Never even heard of it. I didn't even. Now I've had some fingers bruised from storm windows coming down on my hand before, and that's one of the reasons I don't do them.
I don't know if the glass broke and cut his. I don't know exactly what. I mean, these were pretty big windows. They were heavy wooden sashes. So when one of those comes crashing down on you,
well, where my wife works now, granted it's a punch press, a stamp press, but they had a guy that got his hand caught, and it didn't cut his fingers off, but it smashed his hand to the point they had to amputate it.
Yeah, that could have been.
So it could be something like that where it's just not repairable.
Yeah, you can't fix it.
You can't fix it, and the best bet to avoid any type of infection and ongoing problems is to amputate. So that, because again, the business side of me thinks, wow, if that was an employee, all the work comp you got to deal with. Whew.
Yeah. So I mean, those jobs, there's not a lot of people want to take them, and then a lot of the newer generation wouldn't know how to approach them, efficiently. But again, I mean, you learn. Everybody had to learn, so you can learn the hard way. You can definitely, I don't want to say lose money, but you can definitely have a long day on there. You price the job wrong, and you're in for a long, tough day.
Oh yeah. Well, the thing is, like in my experience, the jobs that have taught me the most, I made the least on, because I probably messed a bunch of stuff up and I had to come back and fix. And I've always said that the things you fail at are the things you don't forget. You could do it wrong 100 different times and you just didn't know you were doing it wrong, but that time you do it wrong and something screws up pretty bad.
Yeah,
that's what you remember.
That was another video I put up maybe a couple months ago with the weights in the walls.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't know anything about it. I was back in the company I started for back in 2001, 2002. There was still a lot of hey honey, come on in and say hi. My daughter drew me a picture.
Oh yeah, come on and say hi. Hello.
This is Addison.
Hi.
Hello.
It's Kevin.
What picture did you draw?
I drew the picture of Inside Out.
Oh, that's a good movie. I love that movie. Who's your favorite character in that movie?
Disgust.
That's I love that movie. We my wife and I actually a couple of months ago sat down and watched that. It was like, I think right when stuff was kind of shutting down and we didn't have a whole lot to do. I'm like, well, so turn that movie. It's a great movie.
There's been a number of times where we put on kids movies and they'll either like leave the room or go to bed or go, and I'm like still in there, like, and I look around, I'm the only one left in the room. I'm like, wow, I'm still into this movie.
Yep.
I'm by myself watching a Disney movie, but they do a pretty good job with them.
Yeah, and if I want to get Celeste to watch a tearjerker, I just let her watch Up. She'll cry every time.
They wash the windows in Up. There's actually 2 window washers in Up.
Yeah, I've seen the one. I didn't remember those 2.
Does their own windows at one point, and then I think there's somebody on a scaffold or something at one point too.
Yeah.
Russell.
He hangs on the balloons.
Yep.
Or the house got balloons.
Yeah, some of those movies are pretty good. Inside Out, I thought they did a great job with that. So we know some of the things not to do now as far as historical homes go. Now, one of the other things you deal with out there is saltwater, right?
Oh yeah, yeah. Most of my work is I'm on the shoreline. I cover probably 5 or 6 towns right along the shoreline.
Okay.
And 90% of my work is, I mean, I have a water view 4 or 5 days a week. You know, usually at least 4 days a week. I usually have a water view, which is pretty awesome.
Yeah, I see some of those pictures. They're great.
Yeah, it's so the salt is something it's definitely different on the older windows, the storm windows, the clips. The salt corrodes those clips. So when you do take them apart, you got to clean those out really good. You take a brush, some soap in there, and if you don't maintain those, you go to pull those clips and then they snap.
Yep.
So it's definitely, the salt is a big issue around here, and it gets any component, even on the newer windows, you gotta flush that out, and that's why the water fed pole used to have to do that all by hand. You know, you're trying to scrub into all the nooks and crannies and the crevices, and the water fed pole is just so good at getting in those spaces and rinsing everything.
Yep.
So much more efficiently than trying to do it all by hand.
Yeah, that's one of the things I've always liked about doing water fed work is I can just rinse and rinse and rinse and get, matter of fact, I did a kind of a sales thing one time, and it was one of the things I focused on was the weep holes. Around here, there's a lot of homes, especially on the north side of the house, that doesn't get any sun, is those weep holes will build up with moss and mildew, and then they get plugged, and then that water will back up. So I've actually taken my pencil jet and just sprayed into those, and the amount of gook that just comes flowing out of there, it helps maintain the window. So it's not just an appearance issue. So
no, definitely not.
I can see how flushing all that salt out could be really good.
Yeah, and the most important thing is, and it's the areas you can't really see, but the wind comes off the water, and the salt is in the air, and it gets into the areas you can't really see as well. Mm-hmm. But once it gets into some of those components, like the pivots on the tilt-in windows and the guides and everything, once it gets in there and any of those metal components, even if it's stainless steel parts, like eventually they wear, the stainless steel wears, and the salt will just eat those up. Yeah. So a lot of the jobs I'm doing, twice a year or more, and your upkeep is better, so you're going to get more life out of the window. But if you don't do that, some of these houses you go in, windows maybe 6-7 years old, but they've never had them cleaned, and you notice the parts are just falling apart already.
Good night, Daddy.
Good night, honey.
Yeah, that can be good night. That can be a big add-on to promoting your business, that it's helping with the maintenance and the upkeep of the glass, because pure water is a great way to do it. When around here, I'm sure you guys run into it too. We do some carpet cleaning, so a lot of the entryways into buildings get all the salt buildup over the winter, and I'll actually fill up with pure water, and I'll run my carpet machine off of the pure water tank, because water doesn't like to stay pure, and salt is a mineral, so it basically acts like a chelating agent, and it just absorbs that salt into that water, and then I just flush and get rid of it, and it actually works better. Yeah. So I could see it doing the same thing.
Water-fed pole, there's no question it's more efficient, and it works so much better than trying to clean those traditionally. There were a few jobs that I would do, and it was almost like doing double duty. Before I got into pure water cleaning, I would power wash around the windows first. I would take a power washer, go up and just blast all the little nooks and crannies, blast the glass, get most of the salt off, and then go back and hand wash everything. Because that's really the only way. You're not getting in there with a rag. You're not getting in there with a towel. I mean, a lot of those the tracks and everything, it's almost impossible to get your finger in there. So I would blast it all out with water and then go back and hand wash it.
Yeah, I've actually thought about taking a small power washer. When I wash my truck, I just got just a little small electric, that I used for cleaning the vehicles, and I hooked pure water to that, so that when I'm spraying everything off, I don't have to worry about water spotting, and then of course I rinse with it. But I've thought about on some windows where, again, that north side and sometimes the east side where they just really get built up with all kinds of different gunk and stuff, is to take that electric power washer with the pure water and kind of
Yep.
spray in there and get a little bit more detail without having to run the big unit. So yeah, I could see that being an option that would really help. And again, that could be marketing, because you can
it is. It definitely is.
you can add to the maintenance and longevity of the window. It's not just an aesthetics thing, which a lot of people just.
I pitched that. I'm at a point where, especially after the last couple of years, I'm not marketing to grow right now. My clientele is mostly repeat clients. It's maintenance cleans, but I explain to every one of them like the importance of doing it, especially on the shoreline, doing it regularly. Don't just call me and then have me back 4 or 5 years. Like you just spent millions of dollars on a oceanfront house. Like protect the investment. Windows are ridiculously expensive now if you buy a good window.
Yeah.
And some of these houses have 70, 80, 90 windows. They're spending $250,000 or more just on windows. I mean, it's worth every penny to have them cleaned 2 or 3 times a year.
Yep.
So you don't have to replace them again in 15 years.
Is it just the seaside that ends up getting the bulk of it, or does that still wrap around the whole house and affect the whole house?
It depends. The New England shoreline is it's really curvy. So you have a harbor, on one side, or a salt pond on one side, whatever way the wind is coming in, whatever side the storm comes from, pretty much all sides of the house get it. And if you get one of these days where it's like a dense fog with a little wind coming in, that salt is just hanging in the air and it just envelops the whole house.
Yeah.
So it's everywhere. It's not like one side is, every side can get pounded from one day to the next. And I've done houses where I do the windows one day and then you get one of these storms that comes in and it just trashes one side of the house like immediately because the storm came in that way. And they're like, yeah, I know you were just here yesterday, but can you get us back on for at least, the first floor windows on the outside in the next few weeks?
Yeah, I had a customer that did that this year. It was a referral from somebody, and it was an older couple, and I didn't really want to do it, but I went ahead and did it just because it was an older couple, and I knew they were having trouble finding somebody. And sometimes dishonest people will take advantage of people like that. And then I finally fitted in and got the windows done. And then a few weeks later, they called me back. They had a friend, son of a friend or something, come out and do some power washing, and they splashed all the windows up and asked if I could come back and do it. Unfortunately, I just haven't had the time to do it, but it's like
order of operations.
Yeah, big time. Yeah, big time. And of course, it was a house that had storm windows, and I don't do much with storm windows. I'm to that point in my career, I don't really have to. And a lot of times, if I get the request, I'll either just tell them I don't do storms, or I'll just price it and just be honest with them. It's if you didn't have storm windows, it would only be this much. But with the storms, it's
I've gotten less and less shy. When we start out, you're kind of like, I would write up a quote and I'd be like, there's no way anyone's going to say yes to this. So then you kind of talk yourself into going down.
Yep.
And now on windows, I'm just like, add more. And then give them, because you're going to run into problems. It's not going to be easy. And you might as well, you need to be paid for what you're worth for doing a job like that. And if they don't want to do it, so be it. But
well, this house was like 11 windows, and I think it took me half a day to do it, and normally, normally in half a day doing commercial stuff, I could have half of the side of a building done, that's 3 stories or 4 stories. So
yeah, the job from Saturday, the 1780 house, it was 14 9/6 windows. 2 windows were 4/4 and 2 doors, and I was there 6 hours.
Wow.
I mean, maybe just a little bit over 6 hours, actually. Got there about 10 o'clock, and I didn't get out of there until a little after 4, yeah.
Yeah, because then you got double. You got the French paint or the cut-ups, and then you've got the storms on top of it.
Taking them apart, too. I mean, if the storm comes out, they can go a little quicker. It's not that bad, but when you got to, like, basically take the entire window apart, it's
well, that's been my thing now. If I do a house that's got storms, I plan on at least half of them not coming out like they're supposed to, and then if they do, not going back in like they're supposed to. So there's always something that's involved in it. When
you start washing storms, and that's another thing you learn, going back to your other question about what to pay attention to if you're going to take on one of those jobs. You can go to a house and all the windows look the same, but the storms might be different sizes by 1/4 of an inch in width. And you'll take a pile of storms out to go wash them. And then if you don't have them in the exact right order when you go back, there's another can of worms you got to deal with.
Yep, I've had that happen. I've had it happen with storms and screens.
Yep.
Anytime I have a house that I do all the screens on, I'll actually number them.
Yep.
So I know.
I do that with a lot of them too.
Yeah.
It's not
there's
worth
just been too many times that I've pulled them all out, and like you said, there's just that much little bit of a difference in whether it's how it was made or how it settled into the window that was there. And boy, if you don't get them right, man, that can be an absolute.
There with a rubber mallet.
Oh man,
you're bending the screens.
And oh yeah, I don't know how many screens I've done. Come on. Oh no, I bent it.
Bow it out in the middle and push that one side in, and then you feel that.
Yep. Darn it. Oh man, and then some of them they just don't go back in. And I'm like, well, I guess that one's just staying the way it is. Yep. It's not coming. It's not going to blow out. So I guess that's.
No, it's definitely not going to blow out. That's for sure.
Yeah. So yeah, I could see that being, definitely a big headache. But some guys are making good money off doing storms, and if they don't mind doing them, hey, that's great.
You can. And like I said, I'm trying to get away from them more and more. But occasionally, like the one from Saturday, that's a client I do. She has a couple rental properties, and that's one of her rental properties. And she doesn't even ask for a price, just says go and do it. And so it's one like, all right, I knew what I was getting into when I got there, and I knew it was going to be a long day, but she won't flinch at the bill. And she knows what it took. They popped in at one point throughout the day and saw what I had to do to take them apart.
Yeah.
So they're not going to flinch, and she knows I'm reliable. I'm honest. I've been around for a while. I've been taking care of her houses for 7-8 years. So.
Yeah, that's a big thing with it. It's like the hospital now. We bid such little work now. Most of it's just, hey, when can you do this? When can you do that? Just fit it in, put it on the books.
Yeah, just get it done.
Mm-hmm. Because that whole stress of not knowing whether it's going to be done right, and then having to come back and do it. I just did a job the other day. I have several contacts at the hospital in different divisions of the hospital that sent me a picture of ceiling vents that were dirty, and asked if I could go take a look at it and if I could run a vacuum in there and see if I can get them cleaned up. And for the most part, it was pretty easy. Maybe it took me, I think I was up there about an hour and 45 minutes. And I just sent him an email with some pictures. Hey, everything cleaned up pretty well. The ceiling tiles, some of them really need to be replaced, so you're not really going to get it any better than that. It only took me a little, right around 2 hours. I'm not even going to send you a bill for it. With all the other work that we're doing, it just helps that whole process. The next time he has something, he's not asking for numbers beforehand unless it's something that's got to be approved above his head. And it's a great feeling to know that you're not having to bid out and bid against people. Not that we're overcharging them or anything, but it's just another level of stress that we don't have. And it's nice to know that people have that comfort with you.
Relationship too, because they know that it's reciprocal. You're providing, what you do. They know your service is good. But on the other hand, like, you threw them a bone back by, I'm not going to charge you for these things. So the relationship, both ends end up benefiting.
Yeah, and it's like
that's how you get long-lasting relationships with your clients. I do the same thing. Like, a lot of my good clients, a good friend of mine owns a restaurant, and I go down and I just buy gift cards from him. Yeah, I just buy a bunch of these gift cards, $25, $50 for breakfast restaurant, and good clients. At the end of the day, I flip them a card. Be like, here, go down to Kitchen Little, see my buddy Jimmy. He'll take care of your breakfast. And it's just giving back little things here and there. It just goes a long way with your customer service and your relationship with your customers. So many people leave me, like, I have a key hidden somewhere that I know where it is. I have a garage code. They just let me in their house whenever, and they'll leave me a blank check.
Yep.
It's a job that, they just fill in the number and just text me whatever the price is.
Yeah.
So building that trust and that relationship is the most important thing.
Yeah, that's the difference that I've always talked about, the difference between a satisfied customer and a loyal customer.
Yeah.
That's for me, the book, Customer Satisfaction is Worthless, Customer Loyalty is Priceless. It's almost been like I would say maybe a textbook for how I base my business interactions on, is that I don't want a satisfied customer, because the fact is a satisfied customer will shop anywhere. I want a loyal customer, so that if somebody comes in and says, hey, I can give you a bid on your windows and I can do it cheaper, they just go, no, that's fine.
Yep.
If they can even get to them, because if somebody says, hey, I know somebody, yeah, no, we're good.
We like our guy.
Yeah. And even our contacts, if somebody above them says, hey, I noticed we're paying this for having this done or whatever, can we get that cheaper? They'll just be like, no, we could, but we're not going to.
Yeah.
And here's why. Yeah, so that's great. So definitely on historical homes, either know when to walk away or get some instruction on how to do those windows, so that you don't just you could damage the window, but you could also damage yourself or one of your employees, as we've heard. Still, that's crazy. I can't believe somebody lost 3 fingers over this.
Yeah, I was like, that job, I ended up taking a measurement, and I cut a stick. So when you open the window, the stick fits in there, and every single one of them, I mean, most of the cords were snapped in there, which is what I found, which you can open it and you kind of tilt it a little bit, and then pop it up a little bit more, and it'll wedge itself. But do you really want to trust that when the guy lost 3 fingers? I mean, I used to do a lot of that. Another thing I would do when those cords didn't work, because there was so many years I worked by myself, you open the window and then you got to take the storm out. So I would just use my head and hold the top sash with my head and then pull the storm. I mean, you figure out a lot of little tricks and things like that when you work by yourself. But then it's just like, all right, I'm getting a stick, or another thing I do will wedge something in between the sash and the track. Those little pry bar tools.
Yep.
Keep the plastic pry bar, or even a putty knife. You just kind of wedge it underneath, and then it holds it tight. But
it's certainly not worth losing a hand over.
No, it's terrifying too. I
mean, that's one of the things that when I was talking with Chris, it's the things you don't think about all the time. And that could be the one thing that changes your career and changes your business forever.
Yep.
We were talking about that on the IWCA podcast when Jimmy and I were talking about the safety things and how he got hurt. Yeah. To walk into a house or a business or whatever, and when you're confronted with a possible safety issue, whether it's something as simple as climbing a ladder, that's all Jimmy was doing before he fell, is, this could be the last window that I ever clean. Is that what I want? Is it worth that?
Yep.
And it's just not.
I'm sure everyone, we've all had our close calls, I'm sure. I mean, there's times where I've definitely taken more risk than I should have in certain situations. And I mean, the one that strikes out in my mind the most was I was right near the water, and there was two houses that were pretty close together, so it was like a wind tunnel coming through. The wind was blowing probably 30 plus that day with gusts a little higher, and I was on a 32-foot ladder. The house is up on stilts, so I'm up on the 32-foot ladder, and thank God the stabilizer bracket was straddling the window, and it was about halfway up the window. If I had been just below the window, because the wind started pushing the ladder, and it started moving, and it moved about 8 inches, and then the stabilizer bracket hit the frame of the window.
Wow.
And had I been, 8 inches lower, I would have went under the window, under the trim of the window, and there would have been nothing to stop me. I was actually on the ladder, and I was shaking like this, or it took me a good 5 minutes to compose myself to be able to climb down.
I've been there.
And I froze. I thought for about, it was only a fraction of a second, but it seemed like a lot longer. I was like, I'm falling off a 32-foot ladder right now. There's nothing stopping me. And then it hit the side, and it took me forever to realize that I was safe and I was all right. And I wasn't, because I couldn't actually climb down yet. My legs were shaking.
Wow.
So until I was able to breathe and get that out of my system, I couldn't even attempt to climb down the ladder.
Yeah, because what's the old saying? First you say it, then you do it. Oh, shit. I'm sure I would have done that.
Yeah.
I'm sure I would have.
Backup underwear that day.
Woo. Yeah, and, when we're younger, I remember thinking I was bulletproof. There ain't nothing going to hurt me.
Yep. Yeah, the company I started out for, I kind of just had this little edge about, I got to prove myself. There was a crew. He had 6 to 8 guys at any given time, and I was in a new town when I started this business. My mom had just remarried, relocated there, and I was like, I got to prove myself that this guy made a good call hiring me.
Yeah.
And I want these guys to respect me. So I jumped right in. I got into the ladder work pretty quick. I had a little background with ladders, working with my dad, doing painting and things like that. So I wasn't afraid of heights, but I was definitely pretty a daredevil, risky, climbing steep roofs and hanging on to little ledges, wash the windows, and then like a spider climbing all over the place. But fortunately nothing bad ever happened. But it was
that's the thing. There, a lot of us that have done that. I think that's the admonition to give to everybody, but I would say especially younger, and I'm just saying that because I know how I was when I was younger, is the things that we did that we got away with, we were extremely fortunate that nothing bad happened.
Yeah. But
and
then the other
if one little thing would have changed, we might not be walking today. We might not even be alive today. It's just not worth the risk.
No, it's not. And you learn over the course of time, maybe that seemed like you didn't know a better way to do it then, but now your experience kind of teaches you, all right, this is a much more efficient way to do this. You don't have to hang out the window or hang onto the window trim with your feet on an 11-pitch roof.
Yeah.
You're doing all you can to hold on with one hand and wash with one hand. There's always an easier way to do it. When you're working that hard and trying that hard and risking that much, chances are there's a better way.
Yeah, I remember the day when I was ballsy enough to walk a 10-12 roof. Now I won't even walk an 8. It's got to be a 6 or a 4 or some flat roof before I'll even get on it. I'm like, nope, too steep. No.
Yeah, but there was a time when you didn't think about it. You just
toe boards. Who needs toe boards? No, we'll just get up there and get it done quick.
Yeah.
And I've literally scampered up a roof to get to a window and had to hold on to something.
Yep.
And then you get the window clean, and then you're like, okay, how am I going to get down now? And I got to slide down to the ladder or something.
Yeah, hope the ladder doesn't move.
Yeah, I've had that happen too, where the ladder starts to slide or it kicks out a little bit, and again, same thing. You're like, oh no.
This one house got a bank of skylights. I think there's probably 6 skylights along the roof, but it's got to be a 12 pitch. I mean, the roof is so steep, and I would climb from the top and then kind of slide down to the top frame of the skylight. And then you're literally like, you're on the side and you're just hanging on to the top, washing with one hand, go back to the top, and then step onto the top frame of the next one. But I mean, you're all like, you're just hanging on to wash, and then that grip gives out that one time and see ya.
No. In my old age, that window just isn't getting done anymore.
Yeah.
I'll give you a discount. I don't care.
Yeah.
If I can't get it with a water-fed pole or safely, I'm not doing it.
That window can stay dirty.
Good deal. Well, you got some unique perspectives out there with what you deal with. I appreciate you giving some insight on it. And again, sometimes it's not always learning what to do; it's learning what not to do. That's the most important thing.
Yeah. Yep.
And
that's another thing. Like I had 4 years under my belt with another company, and then he sold the business. And this is actually probably a good. I never really told the story of how I got started, but the guy that I worked for, he was like a father to me. He was a great guy. I worked for him for 4 years. He was stuck in a bit of a predicament. He was ready to retire and sell his business. There was a guy that was there longer than I was, probably by about 8 years seniority over me.
Wow.
He didn't really have a lot of passion for it.
Mm-hmm.
But he definitely had, the ability, he had the knowledge. He was a good window cleaner, but he just kind of went through the motions. Mm-hmm. And I don't know if it was my competitive side or my just work ethic in general, but I always felt like I had something to prove. Mm-hmm. And I had to, prove that I was going to be the best. And when the guy, he's like a father. This guy's name is Zeb. His name is Zeb. So when he was ready to retire, he was in a pickle. He wanted to sell the business to me, but he felt obligated to give the other guy the opportunity to buy it.
Yeah.
So push comes to shove, he ends up offering the business to the other guy first. He took the business. I mean, no hard feelings on my end. I mean, everything that guy did for me, I appreciate. He was the best man at my wedding. I mean, this is someone who I look up to, to this day. He's like a father to me. And so I worked for the other guy for about 6 months, and I knew it was going to be a mess. So I was like, you know what, I'm out. I can't do this. We just butted heads too much. He wasn't really even showing up to work. His first week owning the business, he went away on vacation and left me a list of jobs to do with one other person. And she crashed a motorcycle and broke her ankle 2 days before we were supposed to start our first week of work in April of that year. And then I can't get a hold of the guy. He's in Jamaica. So I'm like, all right, do I just say screw it because it's not my responsibility to do this, or do I show him that I'm going to go above and beyond and do all the jobs? So I ended up doing all the jobs for the whole week by myself. He comes back and it was the start of it. He paid me absolute dick for what I did for him. I did 2 persons work for the whole week. He gave me nothing extra. And I was like, all right, I'm done. So part of me, I know the guy wanted to sell me his business, and they had a falling out. They don't even speak anymore. Him and I still speak regularly. And to this day, he tells me, he's like, you were the right guy to take over. But as much as I would have loved to carry on his business and his legacy with that, I think it's even better that I did it the same way he did it. Because I took everything that he taught me, and rather than just take over something that he built, mm-hmm. I built the same way that he built. I started from scratch and built based off what he taught me. So I think it's a weird feeling and a weird situation, because I see that business the reputation kind of went down, and I would have loved to have carried his reputation and his business name. But at the same time, I am where I am because of what he taught me, and I did it the way he did it. So that's one thing about this business, and I've never really got to tell anybody that part of it and how much that means to me, that I was able to kind of pay him back by doing it his way.
Yeah, everything happens for a reason. I'm a firm believer in that. And to see someone succeed that you've mentored or that you've helped, even just given little bits of advice to, when they come back to you and say, hey, I did what you told me, and man, it worked out great. I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for you. Really appreciate you. I mean, it really, to me, that's part of being successful, is seeing other people be successful in what they're doing. So it may almost mean more to him that you were able to start from scratch. Than
I think his feeling kind of changed on it, because initially, I think after the first couple of years, he was still getting calls from his clients, be like, hey, what's up with your new guy? He's not returning phone calls. His work, the work quality's gone down. And so he kind of felt bad initially, like, oh man, my legacy is being tarnished by this guy. I probably should have sold the business to Kory.
Yep.
And he probably went through that whole feeling of, oh man, I screwed up. And then to see on the other end where I kind of came up and built my own reputation and my own name. And I give him the credit. I mean, to this day, I tell him, I learned I would have never been where I am if it was not for you.
Yep. That's
There's
awesome.
Zero chance I would have ended up having this interview right now on a podcast for window cleaning if it was not for that guy.
And you might not even be where you're at if you had taken over the business. You might not have learned the same valuable lessons, and at some point down the road, you could have hit some speed bumps and ended up being a failure. So
absolutely,
Yep. Like I said, I'm a firm believer that everything happens for a reason. We're either learning something to do or learning something not to do.
Yep.
So, that's a great way to look at it. And that's a great story to see where mentorship and, caring about the other person going both ways. You cared about him and his legacy. He cared about you to teach you the ropes and show you what to do. And to me, that's the ultimate success story there.
Yeah,
it doesn't matter how much money the business makes, but just having a successful business, that's really cool.
And that's to this day, it's by far the thing I cherish the most about the career I have is that relationship that I had the opportunity to build with him, and it was just it's an awesome feeling to be able to be successful now, and to have him, just to have him kind of look up to me now and be proud of where I ended up.
Yeah. I know that feeling when my dad one time told me, this was many years ago now, but he said, you're doing stuff I never even thought about doing. You've taken the business to far different levels than I would have ever done it, and then it's just kind of like, wow, it's having that proud feeling. It's having somebody proud of you. That's an awesome feeling, and it motivates you to want to just keep going and keep doing more.
Yeah, it's really, and that's the best. I mean, that's the best thing you can do to pay them back, is to continue to grow and learn.
Yep.
I mean, you can take what you were given, or they give you the foundation, they give you the basic training, and you can kind of just stay at that level, that plateau. But to keep expanding is really, that's the most important thing. Just to keep
and then
growing.
to add what we're doing over at Into the Flow with, helping other window cleaners when they get hurt and kind of mentoring. It's really more of a mentorship.
Yeah, it is, and it's
group than it is.
More in the group, like the best thing. The network of people that are willing to help in that group is really, you don't see it anywhere else. And you may have a few things to teach in a group like this. Like, you have a handful of things you can teach some guys, but I think everybody in this group has 10 times more to learn from this. I mean, there's a wealth of knowledge in this group. Yep. There's experience in so many different things. So if you just got to keep an open mind and not hesitate to ask. And that's another great thing about the group. You're so welcoming for questions and advice.
Mm-hmm.
Someone puts out a question and you're not getting bombarded with trolls and idiots that are shooting you down or calling you a moron. It's people who genuinely want to help.
Yep. Yeah, that's probably one of the biggest parts. And even us old timers, and there's all kinds of stuff that I learn in there. Just even if it's little tidbits of information, I was doing something a certain way, and somebody has a different idea. It's like, yeah, I had to try that. And
yep.
Lo and behold, it works better than what I was doing before. So
it really, I mean, it's true. I mean, if you can teach one or two things, great, but keep your eyes open because you're going to learn 100 things.
Well, if you're not learning something, then you're not paying attention. You know, like I said, I've always said everybody that I come in contact with, I'm learning something from. I'm either learning something to do or a way to be, or I'm learning something not to do or a way not to be. So, you know, education and learning is an ongoing process. And the point you get in life where you think you know everything is probably the point that you're going to start failing because
you're going to start going downhill.
Yep. There's just always too much. And when I do classes for trainings, even from janitorial standpoint, I always start the class with the quote that they're arrogant and cocky say, I know that, and move on. And people who are confident and successful say, how good am I at that, and seek to improve. And I think that's really how we got to look at it is how good am I? And if I am really good at something, well, then how much am I sharing the knowledge and how much am I helping other people?
Yep. There's always ways to improve.
Always.
You always got to, and that's another thing about, I've gotten a good reputation in my area as one of the better window cleaners in the area. There's a handful of guys. There's another one of my friends I invited to this page, Ian Kelly. He's been around. I mean, he's quality work. He's a good character. He's a good dude. I mean, but there's a lot of hacks out there too.
Mm-hmm.
But the thing that kind of keeps pushing me and kind of keeps me going in the right direction is always trying to think of little things to do to get better, little things to do to make my service better, quality of work better. And you always have to just keep the wheel turning there. So you can't just stagnate and let yourself plateau and think that you're good enough.
Yep. Well, like I talked about with Chris, if you're not growing, you're dying, but that doesn't mean that your business has to have more revenue every year. You know, how are you growing as a person? How are you growing as a business owner? How is the business growing? How are you growing with the community? Whatever it is, there's got to be some type of improvement and growth all the time, or you're going to start going backwards at some point.
Yep.
Well, great information. I appreciate the time, Kory, and we will definitely see more of you on the into the flow with being a moderator. Now we'll suck up some of your time and lean on you. Well, of course, we just got done with that GoFundMe, so you came at a good time because it was pretty busy before that. But we'll have another one soon enough. We'll have another one.
I can imagine.
All right, man. Thanks again for your time. Be safe. Have a good time out there.
Appreciate it. Take care.